Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks, an anonymous coach is speaking out about the Gamecocks, and he's got a lot to say about it. Now, folks, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you're a South Carolina fan and you can handle reality and you can handle this type of stuff, keep watching. If you are not, and you're hypersensitive and you're one of those people that, you know, you've got to find your safe space and all that kind of stuff, this is not the video for you. Okay?
Everyone likes me and thinks I'm great in my safe space.
My safe space.
So the best thing for you to do at this time is, Humongous, tell them.
Just walk away.
Yeah, Humongous always knows best. So we're going to get into this. So look, you've already been warned. If you're, you understand, this is not for everybody. But let's get into what this anonymous coach had to say about the Gamecocks. And we're going to discuss why I do not think they should fire Shane Beamer, regardless how this season goes, which probably will surprise you because I know he's on the hot seat. Everybody knows it. I've talked about it. I've brought it up. But I have my own personal reasons why I think he should stay. And we'll get into that too. And that could also cause some triggering for some folks. This story comes from fan cited by John Bueller. It says, anonymous coach puts South Carolina head coach on blast. It says, ahead of the 2024 season, a few anonymous coaches had some interesting things to say to Lindy's about Beamer. Said one firmly believes he's on the hot seat, because he is. After having had issues with the portal, NIL, and things of that nature, he believes that if Beamer was a more seasoned assistant, he would be a little bit more polished at the podium and not such a lightning rod. For example, bringing up the hot dog, they almost lost the game because of a hot dog. Even though the onside kick that he tried worked, the referees were a couple of minutes late for the kickoff in the second half because they were eating hot dogs, and he flipped out about it. And then he also told us how he broke a foot kicking a Chester drawer in his house because of things weren't going well. Usually something you wouldn't want to tell people. So the most damning thing this coach said about Beamer is that his program's dead in the water. He said, I think Shane is on the hot seat. He had some issues with portal, etc. Said Beamer wasn't ready for that. You can tell the way he handles his press conferences. He had a few big wins, yes, but I see that program dead in the water. And we're going to talk about those 2 wins. Don't you worry. Said conversely, another anonymous coach loves that Beamer was able to pry Georgia State head coach Sean Elliott back to the program. He served as an interim coach before and is beloved by everyone. He said one thing Beamer did that was really smart, he brought back tight ends coach and coordinator Sean Elliott. He's beloved by South Carolina people and coached there for a while. Many thought he'd have been a better head coach than Will Muschamp or Beamer. Sean will get the locker room right where Sean lost the locker room last year. So he's bringing in a coach that can kind of sort of be a pseudo head coach to help calm everything down. Maybe that works. I don't know. I'd want the head coach to be head coach. But, that's me. This writer said, first of all, the one coach that not so casually referred to Beamer as cocky is absolutely hysterical. Yes, that is South Carolina's mascot, but Beamer's brash approach to leading this mid-tier SEC team comes across that way. Here it says, I don't think we're doing justice to how challenging of a season South Carolina has ahead of its season. They have a very tough schedule. If you've not seen it, it's brutal. And while they have some guaranteed wins in this, they've got some really tough games too. See, the easy wins, Old Dominion, Akron, and be careful with Akron. I've told you folks, they will go low. They'll go for your ankles and your knees. Be really careful with Akron. Watch these guys.
Sweep the leg. You have a problem with that?
Yeah, they'll sweep the leg on you. And then they got Vanderbilt and they've got Wolford. So all those are easy wins. So I think they're guaranteed 4 wins. No problem. But the other issue, the other 8 games are rough as they can be. One winnable game they've got is at Kentucky, but it's at Kentucky. And Kentucky's good. And they got Brock Vandergriff, and you're going with Lenora Sellers, who I like as an athlete, 4.0 student, can run like the wind, but he's brand new. He was a high 3-star. I don't know that he's ready. That's the issue. I've got some questions about his footwork, his fundamentals. And in the SEC, if you've got issues, they're going to be magnified. I just think he needs another year. But they were probably afraid they'd going to lose him if they didn't play him, which very well could have happened. And then you've got LSU. That's going to be really tough. Ole Miss, you're not going to beat Ole Miss. You're not going to beat Alabama. You're not going to beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma. Then you got Texas A&M, and I think they're going to be tough. Missouri, you're probably not going to be able to beat them. And then at Clemson. So, I mean, I would not be betting on South Carolina in any of those 8 games. I just wouldn't. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win some. They absolutely can and probably will. But I just can't see where they have another easy win. So 4 games for sure. After that, I don't know. Could be very tricky. So that's what the anonymous coach or coaches are saying about Shane Beamer. And yes, he's on the hot seat. You come off a 5-7 season, you're going to definitely be on the hot seat. Now, magically, they won 2 top 10 wins back in 2022. They came into those 2 games. They weren't playing well at all. They were struggling offensively. And then suddenly and magically, they had a huge rush of offense in both of those games and scored almost 100 points in those 2 games. Prior to those 2 games against 2 good teams that weren't great, it was Missouri and Florida, they scored a grand total of 16 points. They averaged 8 points a game. They scored 10 in one and 6 in the other. And that's probably the closest you can come to matching some sort of level of defense of what Florida and Missouri had against Clemson and Tennessee, the 2 teams that they won and had no problem scoring. Well, after that, they gave Shane Beamer a big extension, tons of money. I mean, it was big. It was very significant. And now you've got him for a while unless you want to pay him a ton of money to leave. So those 2 games kind of, look, they made him. He is who he is right now and got that big contract because of those 2 games. And everybody went in the offseason all fired up. And then what happened? Boom. 2-7 the next 9 games. 2-7. Now, explain to me how you're struggling. You can't score but 8 points a game against Missouri and Florida prior to playing Tennessee and Clemson. Then all of a sudden, you're scoring like 100 points in those 2 games. A 550% increase in offensive scoring in those 2 games against teams that are higher ranked. Doesn't make a lot of sense now, does it?
It's in the billions. It cannot happen, would not happen.
Now, at the time, I thought, well, maybe he's figured something out, and they're going to be good from this point forward. Rattler's a good athlete and a very good quarterback, 5-star guy. They went into the next season with the same quarterback, same head coach, so you would expect them to really run off some wins, especially they started out with North Carolina, which would have been a great way for them to kick off the season. Instead, they got pushed around and went, like I say, won 2 out of the next 9 games. And the one game that they did win at the end of that, guess who they beat? Jacksonville State. And Jacksonville State had them. They had the lead and the ball. And they were moving it, and they fumbled. South Carolina recovered, and they were able to pull off that victory. Had they lost to Jacksonville State, that would have been awful. That really would have been. So anyway, none of that made any sense. And then footballscoop.com came out with a story saying that a person with direct knowledge said that Connor may have reached out to a team that could have helped Michigan in a roundabout way, or a direct way, actually. And that was that Clemson and Tennessee were the 2 teams that could kick Michigan out of the playoff if they lost to Ohio State. And the only team in the country that was playing both Clemson and Tennessee, South Carolina Gamecocks. That's right. So everybody's like, oh, now this is all alleged. This can't be proven at this point in time. And there's also tons of other circumstantial evidence. And I'll show it's a mountain. And you look right here. Again, the story of the person with direct knowledge. We also know that Shane Beamer received a fine of $25,000 when he was an assistant coach for receiving information about an opposing team that he should not have taken in. So he got fined by the NCAA $25,000 for something just kind of like this. So you can't say there's no way that could happen. It's happened once before. And, of course, the fact that South Carolina had scored those 16 points prior to it against 2, fairly decent teams. Then all of a sudden they scored 9 straight touchdowns against Tennessee and beat Clemson at Clemson. Really? So you can kind of understand why they were excited. It's like, oh, my gosh, we're beating 2 top 10 teams. We got to give this guy an extension. We got to raise his pay. We got to make sure not to lose him. And then, boom, afterwards. And then, of course, the wristbands. Y'all remember the wristbands? Holly Dunn of ESPN reported that South Carolina, in the game against Tennessee, had these special wristbands, magical wristbands that had the plays on them. Okay, maybe that's something they wanted to do. But they had never done that prior that season. It was the first time. It was like, what, the 10th game? And they magically decided to use wristbands at home? Now, you could understand that away because of the crowd noise, but at home, you don't need that, do you? Well, anyway, they used them and it worked out great because you could see players going, oh, I'll be dogged. And all of a sudden, they'd be in the perfect play.
Weird.
And then here's the most weird part of this. The next year when they played Tennessee at Neyland, where the crowd noise was incredible, revenge was on our minds, we were going to have our due with South Carolina, and literally we ran Spencer Rattler out of the stadium. He had to get a restraining order against the defensive line. It was that bad. They didn't use wristbands. Now, how many athletes out there would not use the same wristbands in the next game against the same team? I can tell you as an athlete myself, if I got something that's working, I don't change it.
Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
And especially if you've won a big game, you keep doing the same dadgum thing. So that makes no sense. All of this is circumstantial. I can't prove it at this point, but it doesn't look good. Now let's talk about why you should not let Shane Beamer go, period, regardless how things go this year. You already know that Connor Stallions has resigned and refuses to cooperate with the NCAA on any level. He won't talk to him, nothing. He is seized up. Let's just say he's a Michigan guy, and Michigan might have given him an offer that he couldn't refuse.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes it's best to just keep your mouth shut. All right, Jim Harbaugh.
It's got to be America's team.
The head coach of Michigan, the guy that the NCAA was going to hit the hardest on this sign-stealing scandal. Guess what? He took off.
Braves got off and ran away. No! Bravely ran away.
I didn't.
Oh, yeah. Brave Sir Harbaugh took off to the NFL because there was no doubt he was going to get hammered, and he knew it. He wanted Michigan to guarantee a salary, guarantee they'd stick with him no matter what. And they were like, I don't know about that. So he was like, I'm out of here. So who's left to deal with this sign-stealing deal or to even find out if South Carolina had anything to do with it? It's getting tougher. So the one guy, if this happened, that they could actually do something to, if he gets fired, you guys fire him, there's nothing left. Everybody that possibly could have been involved is gone. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And what I think you should do is, first of all, be patient. Look, he's a good guy. He's very likable. He's a little bit Butch Jones 2.0, but he's a smarter version. So you got that going for you. And you don't want to have to do that big buyout. It would be horrible. You got to come up with like 20, 25 million bucks. You don't want to waste that money. So let's say he goes 4-8 or 5-7. That's okay. Just let it pass. All right. It may take a few years for him to get things squared away. And the best thing to do is, number one, and I heard this a lot from Florida fans when it comes to Billy Napier, trust the process. And I can promise you Shane Beamer's got a process. Trust it. If you go 4-8, just trust it more. If you go 5-7, trust. Don't let go. There's a million reasons not to let him go. 25 million. And just relax and be patient. Everybody's always firing coaches all the time. Y'all don't need to do that. Stick with him and maybe it'll work out. And if the sign-stealing thing does come out that he had something to do with it, well, then he'll be there to be dealt with. And that'll give you the opportunity to get out of the contract. Because you can say, oh, well, we can't keep him here because of this. And the NCAA and all that. Now, like I said, it's alleged. People think it, but it doesn't mean that it happened. But anyway, best thing for y'all to do is just relax. Don't let it bother you. And whatever happens, happens. Stick with your head coach. That's the best thing to do. Loyalty matters. And here's the funny part about this. Well, it's not really the funny part. I've never had the first problem with South Carolina folks. Now, Florida, that's a different deal. But South Carolina, not really. The 2022 definitely sticks in my craw because it makes no sense. Nobody can make sense of those two games, except the possible sign stealing. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's continue to cover all these big sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, 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 hit that little button. Won't cost you a dime. And right over here is a most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy, based on your viewing history, something to do with algorithm. I don't really understand the algorithm, but it's something to do with that.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you.
And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.